Hi everyone, it's Lisa Mears. Thank you so much for joining me. In today's video, I'm going to show you 7 different ways of using glitter brush pens to make handmade cards. I will be using scrapbook.com's glitter brush pens to make all of my cards today. The paper that I'm going to be using is the brand new scrapbook.com mixed media paper pad. It comes in white and black. I'm using the white. This is a heavyweight paper. It's perfect for using wet mediums like I'm going to be using today. It's very thick. It's 400 GSMs, which is also about 140-pound cover, and it's very smooth. I personally don't like watercolor paper that has texture, and there is no texture to this paper. It is so smooth, and the markers blend beautifully on this paper. And really quick, I want to let you know that scrapbook.com is currently running a special on a bundle that includes the 6x8 paper pads in both black and white. There will be a link down in the description box for this bundle, and if it's sold out, they do sell these pads individually. The paper pads in the bundle are 6x8 inches, but they also have paper pads that are A2 in size, 4¼ by 5½ inches. So here are the scrapbook.com glitter brushes. I have 12 of them here, but I believe there's about 15 total right now, and I don't know if scrapbook.com has any plans of making additional colors. So let's take a look at the brush itself. The brush has the color shown on the very top as well as on the middle part where it says the scrapbook.com name. And when you twist it open, it has this little yellow ring, and you basically need to just dispose of that ring. And then the glitter is not actually in the bristles yet. You actually have to puncture the black piece by putting the lid back on. So in the left part of the lid is a little pin that allows you to puncture where the ink is. And then once you've done that, just remove the lid again and make sure that clear part right there is really tightened up and there's no space between that clear part and the marker. Otherwise you can have leakage. So as long as there's no space, you should be fine. And you can see that the tip of this marker is a brush. Right now there's no ink coming out. It's just like a paintbrush, but if you push where it says push on the marker, you will start letting that ink flow down to the bristles. So I'm just pushing here, waiting for that ink to come down that barrel, and it's going to come right into the bristles. You can see here it's starting to come down. There it is in the bristles. And then once you have that ink into the bristles, you're ready to go, and you can start coloring and doing all kinds of fun stuff with these markers. So if the bristles do dry out, you just press where it says push and just more ink will come down to the bristles, and that's how you add more ink. So this color here is the pretty pink. It's a very light pink. It's so pretty. And what I love about these markers is that it has the watercolor ink inside, but they also have glitter. So you can color with these, you can create backgrounds with these, and you'll have beautiful color with glitter added. So here I have a Pink and Main Easy Flow brush. This is just a regular water brush. There's water inside, and I can always, once I have the ink down on the paper, just take my water brush and extend that ink to cover more areas of that paper. That way I'm not using so much ink. I just put a little bit of ink down on the paper and use that ink to color. Now keep in mind that this is using water with the watercolor glitter ink, so it's going to be a little bit lighter as you pull that ink down on the ends. If you wanted to have more of an intense color, you can then just use your glitter brush the entire time, just adding more ink to get a more intense, rich color. If you do use a water brush like this, make sure you squeeze water out onto the bristles and get all of the ink off of the bristles so that you can use it again with another color. But look how pretty all of that sparkle and shine is. I love all of that glitter in these glitter brush pens. It's so beautiful. So I have several different colors here from scrapbook.com. There are a couple extra colors that I do not have because they were out of stock at the time that I purchased mine. And they also have a clear marker. So if you were coloring with a, let's say, a Zig Clean Color Real Brush pen that does not have glitter, you can use the clear marker over top just to add glitter to your stamp that you colored with a non-glitter marker such as the Zig. And I'll show you more about this later on in today's video. So I'm going to be showing you lots of different ways to use these glitter brush pens in your card making. And as you watch this video, if you're interested in any of the supplies that I use, I will have links in the description box of this YouTube video and on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. I always appreciate when you use my links because it does help support me. So I want to start out by just making some backgrounds and really showing you the colors. I've cut down all of my card panels to 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inches. And I'm just laying some color down, and we're just going to create really pretty blended backgrounds, similar to what you would do if you are creating a background with ink pads, but instead we're using the glitter brush pens. So I'm starting out with the deep purple, and I'm just going side to side from left to right on this heavyweight cardstock. I used the royal purple on the top, the raspberry pink in the middle, and now I'm using the pretty pink. And I'm just going from left to right on that cardstock to lay the color down, and then I'm going to take a Pink and Main Easy Flow brush. Now this brush has a thick tip, which is perfect for spreading the ink. And I'm just going to add some water and go side to side to get a really nice blend. You can see how beautiful that purple and pink blend together, and then the pink and then the pretty pink down on the bottom, those blend nicely as well. But look at that beautiful background. Now I do want to let you know that these inks will stain your surface, so I suggest using these inks on a non-stick surface, just like the one that I'm using here. I'm using the scrapbook.com non-stick silicone craft mat underneath so that I don't stain my desktop, and you can see that the ink just wipes right off with a paper towel and some water on that silicone craft mat. You guys, look how pretty that blended background is. And when I turn this over, you can see that there is not much leakage here, just on the corners on the sides where some of the water piled up. So the bottom line is this is pretty thick paper, and it's perfect for wet mediums like this, and it's not going to really seep through the back of the cardstock. One of my favorite things to do with glitter brush pens is to create backgrounds. So of course I wasn't going to stop at one background. I had to create some more. So this one has the raspberry pink on the top, and it also has the pretty pink there in the middle. And then I'm going to come in with the key lime green. So you can create backgrounds like this to put on cards that you are using several little stamped images to create a scene. So I thought that these colors would look great together when you need to have a light colored sky and then have some grass at the bottom, because the green would represent the grass and then the pink colors would represent the sky. And I could totally see this background being used with an Easter card. Maybe put some cute little Easter bunnies in the grass with some Easter eggs. I think this would be so cute. So here again, I'm taking the water brush and I'm just spreading that color from left to right just so that I can cover up all of those white areas on that paper. Okay, so for my next one, I'm going to bring in the royal purple, the deep blue, and then I'm going to have the frosty blue at the bottom. And I love how these colors blend as well. So the purple blends into the deep blue, and then that deep blue, it blends right into that frosty blue. I am going to clean off that water brush because I didn't want to bring all of that ink down to the bottom. I still wanted to have some lighter color ink there at the bottom. So as you go through this with your water brush and you blend this, you are going to get lots of color on the water brush, but if you don't want all of that dark color going through the entire piece of cardstock, make sure you clean off the water brush and then go back in and drag the color down. This background could totally be used for a winter sky. I love those colors together. For my next background, I'm going to start out with the coral. I'm also going to bring in the orange juice as my middle color, and then I'm going to bring in the sunshine color. And these colors would be great for an autumn card, like maybe a sunset would be really pretty. So here I'm just squeezing out some of the ink out of the barrel. So if you find that your brush is a little bit dry, just press where it says push and squeeze some ink out and let some ink get onto that cardstock. And then again, I'm just taking the water brush and smoothing that across and blending those colors. Gosh, that is so gorgeous. I wish you all could see this in person because that glitter just makes it 10 times better. If you are creating a lot of backgrounds at once, make sure you clean your mat between each background so that you don't get some of the wet marker on the new piece of cardstock. Okay, so here I'm going to try the deep blue at the top. And then this one is the raspberry pink. I love that raspberry pink, so pretty. I was trying to see if I can let the blue and the pink meet and blend to make purple. So I was coming in with my water brush to see if I can get a really good blend. That blue is very strong, so I'm adding some more pink, and you can see that it is giving me a little bit of purple there. And I keep taking my water brush and cleaning it off on the side, and then just going back in with just the water and trying to mix those inks. And then I'll add a little bit more of that raspberry pink down below so that that pink color will show, and then I'm going to come in with the pretty pink. So I was able to get a little bit of purple there. I think that's really pretty, and you could just take your paper towel and just dab off where the ink is building up on the sides, just like I'm doing. Now, when you're done creating your background, before you start working with your card panel, you have to make sure that it's completely dry. And you can either just let it lay flat to dry, or you can even take a heat tool to speed up the drying process. But you don't want to start putting stamps on it or die cuts on it while it's still wet. So there is that background with 3 different color inks, but I actually made 4 colors because I was able to blend that blue and pink together. So I'll go ahead and wipe up all of this ink here. You can also take another piece of cardstock if you didn't want to waste that ink, and you can press it into your mat and put some of that ink on your new piece of cardstock. But I just wiped it up here with a paper towel. Okay, so here I'm coming back in with the deep blue. I really love this blue color. I think I've used it on several of these backgrounds. It is so pretty. I love how deep and rich that color is. And you can really change the intensity of it by having darker at the top and just using that water brush to make it lighter towards the bottom. So here I'm coming in with the frosty blue to add the lighter blue towards the bottom of this panel, and then I'm going to come in with the tan and add tan at the bottom. So this little scene reminds me of the beach. So if you're ever making a scene card and you need to have some sand at the bottom, you can totally use this as a background. So let's say you had some palm trees and maybe you had a lounge chair and a beach umbrella for stamps. You could totally put them there at the bottom of that background and make it look like they're sitting in the sand with the ocean behind it. Okay, so this background, I'm actually starting at the bottom and I'm using some greens. I have the Christmas ivy, which is that dark green. So pretty. I'm going to come in with the key lime, which is a lighter green. And then on the very top, I'm going to add, I believe it's going to be the deep blue. But I was trying to get a background that could resemble maybe underwater. So if you wanted to create, let's say, a scene card that you had some underwater stamps, some fish, and maybe some mermaids or whatever you might have, you can pop them on a background like this and it would look like it could be an underwater scene. So I showed you lots of backgrounds by just adding one color and then the next and then the next in a row. But you can also take those colors and add those markers in different patterns on your cardstock. Here I'm just making large circles. And then if you take a sprayer, here I'm using the Ranger Distress sprayer and spraying this with water, you can see how adding that water will allow the ink to expand to other parts of that cardstock, creating a really beautiful effect. If you like this type of look, not everybody does. Some people prefer the more clean lines like I initially showed. So here I'm just adding more ink and more water just to kind of get those colors moving, but you can see all of the movement here when you add sprays of water. You can continue to add more color to some of the white areas. Here I'm just adding some more of the sunshine yellow, and you can also spray again and use your paper towel to pick up any of the large puddles that are on the cardstock. You can also take your heat tool and dry this, and the heat tool will also move around some of that color. So it will push it around a little bit more. And once it's dry, if you wanted to add more color, you can do that, or you can just leave it alone and you can use it as a background on a card. So let's go ahead and take some of these backgrounds and turn them into cards. I'm using the Rose Blossoms stamp set from scrapbook.com, and I'm just going to ink it up with some black ink and I'm going to stamp it down. And I will say that this has to probably be one of the easiest cards to create because you just added some ink to your background and stamped out an outline stamp with some black ink. You don't even have to color this stamp. This stamp is very detailed. There's a lot of parts to it. Some people have trouble actually coloring flowers. So if you're one of those, just make a background like this with your markers, stamp it down with some black ink, and you don't have to do any coloring because you have that beautiful watercolor background that you created with the glitter brushes. I added the sentiment thank you to the top, also in black ink, and then I cut this panel down to 4 inches by 5¼ inches and added it to a piece of black cardstock. I think that black cardstock really makes that black ink pop on the card. The black cardstock I cut to 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 and then just added that to an A2 size card base. That's 4 1/4 by 5½ inches. Some of the backgrounds might be too dark for black ink to show up. So if that's the case, I'm just going to do some white embossing here. So I'm adding my Pink and Main Magic Anti-Static Powder Brush to my background. I'm going to ink up my stamp with some Versamark ink. I'll stamp this down onto my panel. Now the Versamark ink is a clear ink, but I didn't clean my stamp very well, so I did still have some black ink left over on that stamp, and that's why you can see some of the black outline on the panel. But that's okay because I'm going to add some white embossing powder over top of this. And when I add the white embossing powder over the top and I heat set it, you can see how vibrant this stamp is against this background. I love this card so much. I think this one might be my favorite out of the two, although it is a pretty close call because they're both so pretty. But you can see that when you heat set this and melt that embossing powder, it just, gosh, it's gorgeous. So use this method when you just want to add a stamp, but you're adding the stamp to a darker background. If you are heat embossing, again, I can't emphasize enough how important it is for you to make sure your background is completely dry. You don't want any of that embossing powder to stick if it's wet. And that's also why I use the powder brush on my background before I stamped it down, because I didn't want the embossing powder to stick where there is no ink. So I added the word hello using white cardstock. I added some gems to the front and added that to a white A2 size card base. My panel I also cut down to 4 inches by 5¼ inches. So for my next example, I'm going to show you how you can use these backgrounds to make a scene for your stamped images, and I'm using the Scrapbook.com Spring Animals stamp set, which I've already stamped and colored and cut out, and I am just going to put them on this background to make a really cute little fun spring scene. So you can see I have the green at the bottom for the grass, and then I have the pinks for the sky. So I'll go ahead and add all of these little animals onto this background. I did cut this background down with a stitched rectangle die. When I do backgrounds like this with the watercolor markers, I always like to trim them down to give them a more clean look, because sometimes there's some ink buildup on the edges. So I went ahead and added a sentiment, added it to a scalloped rectangle, and put it on a card base. You can see all of that beautiful shimmer and shine with that glitter in the background. It's so pretty. So you can also use these background with your die cuts. Here I'm using the Scrapbook.com Sprig Dies, which you see they're laying on the left side of my card panel. I just die cut them with some white cardstock, and you can add these white die cuts to the beautiful backgrounds that you've created. I did cut this panel down so that it would fit behind a scalloped rectangle die, and I'm just adding those sprigs with some glue and trying to decide which stamp I'm going to use. I want to make sure that I have enough room to stamp my sentiment, so that's why I keep putting the stamp over that panel and then taking off that bottom sprig, because I want to make sure I have enough room. And I think I'm going to end up not going with that bottom sprig after all, because my stamp that I'm going to use is pretty large. So I'm going to go ahead and bring this panel into my MISTI, and I'm going to stamp out Sending Hugs with some black ink. So I'll go ahead and stamp that down, and then I'll remove that panel from my MISTI, and I'm going to give that bottom sprig one more try at trying to add this to the bottom here. So I'm just kind of positioning that scalloped rectangle over that panel just to see where I can put it so that you would still be able to see it after I add that rectangle. So I'm just going to add a little piece of it. It doesn't even need to be the whole thing. And then I'm just going to trim off the excess on all of those sprigs. And then I'll add that rectangle right to the top. And then I'm just going to add this to an A2 size card base. So I'm just going to add it right there in the middle. And that is so pretty. I love that. You can also add these panels behind background dies or cover plates, and here I have the Sunburst die from Scrapbook.com that I die cut out of some white cardstock, and I'm going to add this on top of the orange and yellow panel. I'm going to stamp out a sentiment from the Scrapbook.com Happy Birthday stamp set, and the yay you and the yay and the hooray, those fit perfectly in that center circle. I am going to end up using the yay you, make this a birthday card, and I'll just stamp that out with some black ink. And I'm going to add some balloons from the Scrapbook.com Party Animal stamp set. So I'll go ahead and stamp out the top of this balloon with some Catherine Pooler ink. I'm using All That Jazz. And then I'll line up the string on the balloon and use the same ink for the string. I cleaned off that stamp, and now I'm going to use the Be Mine ink and I'll do the same thing, ink that up, and also the string. I'll go ahead and cut those out of the cardstock and I'm going to add them to the card. I'm also going to bring in a bow from the scrapbook.com Bow Toppers die set. This die set has so many different bows in different sizes, and I'm going to use this small one because it fits more in line with the size that I need, and I just die cut it out of some silver mirror cardstock and I'll just add it to my balloons. So then I just added this to a card base and I stamped out "It's Your Birthday" on the inside. So in addition to card backgrounds, you can also use these glitter brush pens for coloring your stamps. I'm going to show you 3 ways to color your stamps, starting with taking the marker and coloring directly on the stamp. So here I'm using the deep purple and just coloring that large floral. This is the scrapbook.com Rose Blossom stamp set. It's the same stamp set I used on the cards at the beginning of this video. And then I'm going to color 2 of them in the purple and 4 of them in the sunshine yellow color. I'm also going to bring in the key lime green and I'll color the leaves. After I color the stamp, I'll go ahead and stamp it down onto my cardstock. And then I'll use my Distress sprayer and spritz the cardstock with water. And you can do as much or as little as you want. I'm just spraying a little bit of water because I still wanted to be able to see that flower image. If you spray too much water, it might make it so that too much ink is moved around and you wouldn't be able to see the shape of the flower. So you can see you get that watercolor flower look, but if you really wanted to define the edges, you can always add some white embossing powder. But before doing that, you have to make sure that this panel is completely dry. So I did dry it with my heat tool, and now I'm just adding some powder over my image. And then I'm going to add some Versamark ink to my stamp. And again, before you add this ink, make sure you clean your stamp set. The marker did stain the stamp set a little bit, but it's okay. I know that I cleaned it well, so it's not going to spread that color. And then I stamped down the Versamark ink onto the stamp, and I'm just adding some white embossing powder over top of my image, and then I will heat set this. And you can see just by adding that white embossing powder that the watercolored flowers are more defined. So that's another option that you have when using this technique. You can do with or without the embossing powder. So here, if you wanted to add some more ink, you can. I'm just putting some ink down on my mat and picking it up with a water brush and putting it over some of those leaves. I wanted to bring in some more of the green, so again, I just added some of that ink and I'm doing some of the sunshine yellow with this flower here on the top to bring in more yellow. I'm going to cut this image out of the cardstock using a heart die from scrapbook.com. So I'm just placing the die over my flower where I want it, and I'll run that through my die cutting machine. And off camera, I used a embossing folder from Spellbinders. It's the Leafy embossing folder, and I used that on some white cardstock, and you can see I just added the heart to the embossed background and added a sentiment that says "I love you so much," and that sentiment is from the pretty pink Posh Valentine sentiment strips. I think that turned out so pretty. So another way of using these glitter brush markers is just to color your stamps with them. And I am just going to use some of the orange. Here's the orange juice color, which I added to the very center of that flower. And then I'm coming in with the sunshine yellow and just dragging that color out. So blending those 2 colors and dragging it out towards the bottom of the leaf. And then I'm going to use my Pink and Main water brush to drag that color towards the end of the petals. And the water brush that I'm using here is a more detailed fine tip brush. It's not the same brush that I used at the beginning of this video when I was blending the markers on the background. That one was more of a thicker brush. so that I can cover more area, and this brush is much thinner and detailed. So just by coloring your stamped images with these glitter brushes, oh my gosh, it not only adds that beautiful watercolor look, but it also adds all of that beautiful glitter to your stamps. I'm going to be coloring my next flower with some of the pinks. So I have the raspberry pink that I'm going to color on the petals here, and then I will bring in the pretty pink and add that towards the bottom of the petals and just blend that in with the raspberry pink. For these petals, I did not bring in the water brush. I just used those two colors, and you can still get a really beautiful blend. For the leaves, I'm using the key lime green and just going over some of the lines on those leaves, and then I'll use my fine tip water brush and just extend that color. I wanted to really add some darker shadows to these petals, so I'm coming now in with my Zig Clean Color Real Brush pens, and these pens have such a very fine tip, and I'm able to really get into the petals and add that darker shading. So here I'm using my peach pink marker and just adding some shading along there. And again, these Zig markers, they are watercolor markers, so they blend beautifully on this cardstock. And then I'm just going to come in with my water brush and blend that Zig Clean Color Real Brush marker in with that glitter brush to get a really nice blend. So I'm using both the glitter brush and the Zig markers here, and it just creates such a beautiful, beautiful color on that flower. So I'm going to hold this close, and I want you to see the difference between the flower that I just colored and the one on top where I did not apply the Zig marker, and you can see the difference in the depth of the flower. So I went ahead and did that for all of the pink flowers, and now I'm just adding some of my May green marker. This is my Zig marker to those leaves, and I'm doing the same thing by just adding a little bit of the darker color, and then I'll bring in my water brush just to give that a little bit better of a blend. So I went ahead and cut out the flowers, and I put them on an embossed black background, added a sentiment and a few gems. So next I want to show you the clear glitter brush marker. This marker is clear, it just has glitter in it, there's absolutely no color, and you can see that here. I've already put the glitter into the tip. And this marker is good for if you had other markers. Here I'm just using a regular watercolor marker. It's a Zig Clean Color Real Brush pen to color up this petal. So I have this marker here that doesn't have any glitter, but I can always now come in with my clear glitter brush marker and use this in place of a water brush. Because these are both watercolor markers, you can actually use this glitter brush to spread that watercolor from the Zig marker throughout the petal, and it will put that glitter throughout the petal for you because you're using the clear glitter brush. I think this is so pretty. The color of the marker does get on the tip of the glitter brush. Just be sure you wipe it off on a paper towel so that you don't spread that color when moving on to another marker. So if you like these glitter brushes and you're on a budget, this marker would probably be the one that I would suggest to go for, just because you can use it with your markers that you already have. So here I'm just going to do another example, coloring up the leaf in my green watercolor marker, and I'll use the clear glitter brush as my water brush to expand that green color, all while adding glitter at the same time. So again, that marker works just like you would a water brush or even a paintbrush dipped in water, only it has that glitter in it. So, oh gosh, that is so gorgeous. The clear glitter brush can also be used to add to your non-watercolor markers. So here I'm just going to color a petal up using some of my Copic markers. So once the entire petal is covered with my Copic markers, and by the way, Copic markers, in case you don't know, they are alcohol-based markers. They are not watercolor markers. So I color the entire petal up, and then I will bring in my glitter brush and just add a coat of glitter over the top. So you can still make those petals sparkle using this glitter brush. However, the glitter brush is not going to spread the color. It's just going to add the glitter on top. So I hope you liked my video today. If you had a favorite card or technique, or even both, I would love to hear that in the comments below. If you are interested in any of the products that you saw on my video, I will have them linked in the description box below and on my blog at lisamearsdesigns.com. And I always appreciate when you use my links to make your purchases because it does help support me. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you like videos like this and want to see more, be sure to click that subscribe button and turn on your bell notifications so that you'll be notified when I release new videos. Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a wonderful day. Bye-bye.